They don't build empires by thinking like employees. They don't shift the world by following schedules someone else wrote. They don't invent the future by asking for permission. You must understand something fundamental. The battlefield of wealth, power, and influence is not fought with hands first. It's fought in the mind. Before a billionaire builds a skyscraper, he constructs the mindset to believe he can. Before a leader shifts a generation, he masters the battlefield between his own ears. The worker waits for orders. The billionaire creates vision. The worker seeks comfort. The billionaire engineers pressure into power. The worker thinks about surviving the week. The billionaire obsesses over shaping the century. If your thoughts are average, your life will be. Every fortune starts as an idea. But ideas alone are cheap. Millions have them. Only a few believe in them with such irrational, unshakable certainty that the world is forced to conform. Think about Henry Ford. The man was ridiculed for believing the average American could afford a car. His own engineers told him the 8-cylinder engine he wanted was impossible. Ford didn't fire them. He told them to try again, then again, then again. Build it, he said. I don't care how long it takes, build it. That's the mind of a billionaire. Not just wealth in the bank, wealth in the mindset. Where others see limits, he sees puzzles. Where others stop, he begins. And now I ask you, when you wake up, are you building your own empire or someone else's? Are you designing your mind or letting society program it by default? Are you cultivating a mind that demands abundance or tolerates scarcity? Because here's the truth no one tells you. You were born rich in potential, in spirit, in imagination. But the world taught you to think poor. To fear risk. To crave approval. To trade time for money without ever owning either. You want to think like a billionaire? You must kill the mindset that worships the weekend. You must destroy the thinking that trades presence for distraction, dreams for safety, vision for a paycheck. You must stop thinking like a worker. A worker says, I hope this works. A billionaire says, it will work or I will die building it. That's belief. That's power. That's the kind of mental wiring that moves nations. When Andrew Carnegie, one of the wealthiest men in history, was asked how he built such a massive fortune, he said this: I can keep myself deliberately in a state of faith until that faith becomes reality. He trained his mind to believe long before the world gave him a reason. And this is where the average mind collapses. Because the average person only believes when they can see it. They wait for proof. But the billionaire's mind creates proof from nothing, from vision, from persistence, from fire. You can keep living on autopilot, dragging your spirit through routine, convinced that mediocrity is safety. Or you can choose the fire. You can train your mind for greatness like a bodybuilder trains his muscles, daily, painfully, with obsession, and every rep of discipline, every set of sacrifice, every mile of focus you endure. You sculpt the mind of a billionaire. A worker trains to cope. A billionaire trains to conquer. Now let me be clear. You don't need $1 billion to train your mind like one who has it. Because true wealth isn't the number in your account. It's the depth of your clarity, the strength of your purpose, the control you have over your thoughts, and the intensity with which you chase your calling. You want a new life. You need a new mind. You want a new reality. You need to burn the old beliefs to the ground. You were not born to be passive. You were not born to live on default. You were born to create. To forge. To imagine, command, and manifest. But that version of you, the one capable of shaping worlds, only awakens when you stop thinking like a worker and start building the mental infrastructure of a builder, of a visionary, of a sovereign mind. A worker asks, what should I do today? A billionaire asks, what must be built that no one else dares to build? A worker looks at the clock. A billionaire looks at the legacy. So let me ask you, who are you becoming? Because every moment you spend tolerating distraction, tolerating fear, tolerating a diluted version of yourself, you drift further from the life you were born to claim. You will never attract wealth, impact, or greatness with a mind trained for compliance. The mind must be reprogrammed, deliberately, ruthlessly, obsessively, to align with the life you demand. You must develop clarity of vision. Because power begins in clarity. You can't hit a target you can't see. You can't manifest a future you never visualized. And you can't command the world if you can't first command your focus. Walt Disney said, if you can dream it, you can do it. But he didn't mean wishful thinking. He meant hold it in your mind so clearly, so repeatedly, so vividly, that the universe has no choice but to cooperate. That's vision. That's obsession. That's billionaire level clarity. Now listen, if your thoughts are sloppy, your results will be. If your goals are vague, Your effort will lack direction. And if your identity is built around survival, success will feel like betrayal. So you must stop merely setting goals and start becoming the kind of person who achieves them by default. The person who visualizes daily. The person who controls their inner narrative like a script. The person who wakes up and doesn't hope they feel motivated. They've decided to dominate the day long before sunrise. You don't wait for motivation when you've trained your mind to operate on principle. And billionaires? They operate on principle. On system, on internal law, not emotional weather. Most people let life happen to them, but the ones who rise, the ones who shape the economy, build empires, impact millions, they train their thoughts with the same precision an athlete trains his body. They know that thoughts repeated become beliefs. Beliefs drive behavior, and behavior shapes destiny. Let that sink in. Everything you are is the echo of the thoughts you allowed to live in your head. If you tell yourself you're just average, the world will agree. If you convince yourself that greatness is for them, not you, the world will nod and move on. But if you choose a new thought, a violent new standard, and repeat it, believe it, act on it with obsession, you will bend the world to match your internal state. Train your mind like a billionaire, not like a worker, because wealth flows where identity grows. Because freedom begins the moment you stop seeking comfort and start seeking control. You want freedom, you want impact. Then start with discipline of thought. Not once, not occasionally, every day, until it becomes who you are. And when that happens, when your inner world becomes forged like steel, your outer world has no choice but to rise to meet it. Your mind is either your greatest weapon or your greatest enemy. It is either building your legacy or eroding it silently. And the difference is how you train it. A billionaire's mind is not naturally superior. It is trained to be decisive where others hesitate. It is trained to hold vision in the face of failure. It is trained to see long-term gain in the presence of short-term pain. That's the discipline most people never learn because it requires sacrifice. It requires dying to the identity you built when you were weak. It requires walking away from comfort, validation, and safety. But let me tell you something most will never admit. Greatness costs everything. You were never meant to keep, and the worker clings to those things, while the billionaire burns them at the altar of destiny. There is no success without self-mastery. There is no wealth without mental dominion. You must choose your thoughts the way a sculptor chooses his chisel, deliberately, patiently, with the end always in mind, because what you tolerate in your thoughts, you eventually see in your results. A lazy mind becomes a lazy life. A fearful mind becomes a limited life. A reactive mind becomes a chaotic life. But a trained mind, a mind that rises early, speaks life into its future, visualizes with clarity, commands its emotion, and holds the line in the dark, that mind is unbeatable. Think of Thomas Edison. Over 1,000 failed attempts to create the light bulb, and when asked how it felt to fail 1,000 times, he said, "I didn't fail 1,000 times." The light bulb was an invention with 1,000 steps. That's billionaire thinking. That's mental endurance. That's a man who trained his thoughts to serve his mission, not his emotions. He decided to win, and so he did. What are you deciding every morning? Because every day you wake up, you cast a vote, not just with your actions, but with your thoughts. You vote for either your potential or your excuses. You vote for either your future or your fears. You don't need better luck. You don't need a new job or a breakthrough moment. You need a new operating system, one where your default thought isn't doubt, it's dominance. Where your default posture isn't hesitation, it's hunger. Where your default setting isn't "I'll try," it's "I'll make it happen or die on the hill." Because that is what separates the worker from the builder, the average from the extraordinary, the prisoner of routine from the architect of reality. Train your mind to expect more, and your world will follow. Stop glorifying exhaustion. Stop hiding in distractions. Stop selling your soul for small checks and cheap dopamine. Train your mind like your future depends on it. Because it does. The next generation is watching. Your name is being written with every decision. Your ceiling becomes someone else's floor. So raise it. You are the author, not the victim. You are the creator. Not the consequence. The difference between a billionaire and a worker is not money. It is mentality. It is how they speak when no one is listening. It is how they act when no one is watching. It is how they think when failure is whispering in their ear. And the one who masters that space, he doesn't wait for permission. He gives it to himself. You cannot build a new world with the same thinking that built your prison. You cannot rise with a mindset built to obey. You must rewire your belief system from the foundation. A worker asks, "Can I afford it?" A billionaire asks, how can I create it? A worker fears rejection. A billionaire turns rejection into fuel. Because when your identity is forged in purpose, nothing external can define your worth. You don't crumble at criticism. You don't run from difficulty. You don't need applause. Because you've already applauded yourself in the dark when no one believed. That's billionaire energy. Unshakable. Focused. Self-made in thought before ever becoming self-made in wealth. Listen carefully. If your emotions control your actions, you're not free. If your circumstances dictate your mindset, you're not ready. And if your comfort zone is where you find peace, you're not destined for greatness. Because greatness is uncomfortable. It's lonely. It's built in silence, in reps, in rejection, in the relentless decision to move forward anyway. That's what Steve Jobs did. He didn't follow trends. He created vision. He thought differently. Literally, while others were optimizing yesterday's systems, he was imagining tomorrow's future because he trained his mind not to conform, but to lead. The world belongs to those who think independently. To those who break from the herd. To those who think so clearly and so intensely that others eventually call them lucky. But luck is the lie the lazy tell themselves to explain away someone else's discipline. So let me say it again. Train your mind like a billionaire, not like a worker, because no one is coming to hand you purpose. No one is coming to crown you king of your own potential. You must claim it, create it, command it, and you do that by mastering the invisible, your thoughts, your beliefs, your inner monologue. That's where success begins, not in the markets, not in the meetings, but in the private, silent, internal world where your destiny is negotiated. Every single day, a worker waits for inspiration. A billionaire becomes it. A worker fears mistakes. A billionaire sees mistakes as tuition, the price of power. Because every setback teaches strategy. Every failure teaches focus. Every delay sharpens desire. You don't get rich by avoiding pain. You get rich by becoming unbreakable in it. You want a stronger life? Then build a stronger mind, and that starts with discipline. Discipline is the bridge between your mind and your manifestation. It's the evidence that your vision is real, not just in theory, but in how you live. You show me a man with vision, but no discipline. I'll show you a dreamer with regrets. You show me a man with discipline, clarity, and command of his emotions. I'll show you the next empire. That's what separates the thinker from the executor, the dreamer from the doer, the worker from the one who rewrites history. Don't train your mind to get through the day. Train it to dominate it. Train it to own your emotions. Move with intention. Act with finality. No maybes, no apologies for ambition. The world has enough average. You were born to build what others fear, and that kind of power doesn't show up. It is summoned. No one tells you how expensive your old self will be, how much it costs to keep thinking like you've always thought, how many dreams get buried because someone never rewrote the story in their mind. But billionaires, they write their story twice. First in the imagination, then in the world. They don't just see the future, they rehearse it. They live it internally until the outer world catches up. Visualization isn't fantasy, it's mental rehearsal for destiny. When Carnegie closed his eyes, he saw steel cities before there was even steel. When Oprah was broke and invisible, she spoke to her soul as if the world was already listening. When Elon Musk was laughed at for trying to send civilians to space, he was already mentally there, before the rockets ever launched. The mind leads. The world follows. So what are you visualizing? Fear, rejection, survival, or power, expansion, vision? Because whatever you dwell on, you become. That's not law of attraction fluff. That's psychology. That's neurology. That's universal law. Billionaire thinks about opportunity until he finds it. A worker thinks about obstacles until they multiply. Train your mind to see the win, even in the war. And let me tell you something about purpose. It doesn't whisper. It roars, but only when the noise of doubt is silenced. Purpose doesn't come in a neat little package. It's unearthed, like gold, through pressure, through hunger, through questioning everything you thought you were. You won't find it in comfort. You find it in fire. You find it in stillness. You find it when you stop asking the world who you are and start declaring it. A worker waits to be assigned purpose. A billionaire creates it. You don't need permission to live fully. You don't need validation to be powerful. You don't need applause to pursue your calling. What you need is alignment. Mind, vision, action, spirit, align like a beam of light cutting through stone. So what now? Now you stop waiting. You stop overthinking. You stop negotiating with fear like it's your landlord. You evict the mindset that says, this is enough, because enough is the death of greatness. Enough is the word they taught you to keep you small. Enough is where dreams go to be buried with a smile. You were not born for enough. You were born for overflow, for influence, for purpose. For fire so strong that playing small becomes more painful than standing tall. You don't change your life by wishing. You change it by rewiring the machine that runs it all, your mind. You rewire it with thoughts that align. With words that cut through doubt. With habits that reinforce identity. And with a vision so real it haunts you. When you sleep, that's the billionaire standard. That's the difference between living by design and dying by default. So I'll say it one last time. Train your mind like a billionaire, not like a worker. Because in the end, wealth doesn't start in your bank account. It starts in your belief system.